Welcome to the Masters in US series. If you've not watched the previous videos, I'd suggest you to start from the beginning so that you can maximize your understanding. You will have a banner in the top right of your screen. You can click that and access the playlist. So with that out of the way, let's start step 2, which is preparation for MS. So this step will be containing your standardized tests, which complement your MS application. I think you've guys heard of these tests because they're really famous. So the first one is GRE, which tests your aptitude, and then you will have an English proficiency exam. So you have your IELTS, you have TOEFL, you have a few other exams. Like I've also heard of PTE. This is usually used in Australia, masters in Australia and their education programs. And recently, another one was Duolingo. And so these are basically exams that make sure that you have enough proficiency in the English language to understand the instruction in the program, and you're not absolutely clueless when you arrive in US in your university. Out of these exams, you can choose any exam that your university supports. Right. I have this. I get this question a lot. That should I write Duolingo or should I write TOEFL? Again, it depends on your university and what your university accepts. But I would suggest, my suggestion would be to go with IELTS because this is a universal English proficiency exam. So again, we'll come to this, but there are two types of IELTS: academic version of IELTS and general version. We have to go with academic because we're pursuing masters. Right. So with this out of the way, let's go to the next step. Now let's understand the GRE exam pattern. And to be honest, I did not understand the GRE exam pattern until I actually gave a mock test. So that would be my first advice to you guys. And many people do this, that before starting, just give a mock test because I personally think that anyone who has successfully passed 10th grade, they can give the GRE because you don't really need any specific knowledge. It's just basic math in English and, basic math in English. So you should be able to give it. And then, whatever score you get in your first exam, whether it's 290 or 300, whatever, throughout your preparation, you have something to track your progress relative to. You can track your progress if it's going up, if it's going down, should you change your method, etc., etc. So I would definitely advise you to give a mock test first. Now let's actually come to the format of the exam. So the first and foremost section is going to be is called analytical writing. It's basically writing 2 essays. Each essay you will be given 30 minutes. So in total, this is a 1-hour task. So the first hour of your exam, you will be writing 2 essays, right? And then after this, after you've written 2 essays in 1 hour, you will be coming to the next section of the exam, this section. Let me explain what this section is. The first one will be your verbal assessment. Verbal assessment is nothing but, 2 sections which will test your English proficiency. It's, a bunch of testing your vocabulary, reading comprehension, etc., things like this. So it's basically your English. And the quant assessment will be testing your mathematics. Okay. So now let's first talk about this verbal assessment. In the verbal assessment, you will have 2 sections, section 1, section 2. 30 minutes. This first section will be 30 minutes, 20 questions. And section 2 is absolutely similar, same, 30 minutes, 20 questions. So this would be 60 minutes. And then again, your quant assessment will have 2 sections, 35 minutes, 20 questions, 35 minutes, 20 questions. Both are same. So in total, there will be 70 minutes. Right. So these 4 sections can come in any order. So you can have verbal, quant, then verbal, or you can have one verbal, one quant, one verbal, one quant. So this is also very important to remember that there is no specific order like, one verbal, one quant or something like that. Another thing that you have to understand is that after these 4 sections, you will have something called an unscored section. As you can see over here, the unscored section means that you will not be given any marks for this section. This section is for the GRE research purpose. For example, they'll give you some questions and then they'll try to see if you can answer those questions or not. So, for example, let's say I scored 340 out of 340, which is actually possible, by the way. I scored a perfect 340 out of 340, but then in the research section, which is not uh, graded, they'll not give marks for it. I struggled and I scored, let's say 50% in this. They'll understand that these questions are too hard to be put in the test. So, they'll avoid these questions in future exams, something like that, basically. So my point being that you will be given an extra section, which will not be graded. But the catch over here is that they won't tell you that this section is, an unscored section. So you'll have to attempt it with all your, you have to be serious about it. You can't be like, okay, this might be an unscored section or research section. I'll just wing it or something like that. So from this out of the way, I think we have covered the GRE format. Let's talk about the score. Now, these are 40 questions. So let's say, so this contains 40 marks. This again has 40 questions. So 40 marks. But one confusing thing about the GRE scores is that you cannot score less than 260 out of 340. Now, this was very confusing for me in the beginning, but then I realized that whatever marks you score, for example, in your verbal assessment, they will add 130 to it. And whatever marks you score in your quant section, they will add 130 to it. So that is why you cannot score less than 260. If you just sit in the exam, do absolutely nothing and come back, this is the score you will get. And I've researched about this, and a few people online say that it's better to get a score like 260 out of 340 instead of getting 0 out of 80. So just to boost the morale of the students, or so that they don't really feel that bad or something like that. Again, I cannot say how authentic this is, but that's probably the reason why they do this. But anyway, you have 40 marks for verbal, 40 marks for quant, and then obviously you get 260 marks for free. So assuming you scored full marks, 260 plus 80 will be 340, and that is the maximum score that you can get. So I think we've covered the marking scheme. Let's talk about the time limit of these sections. So 30 minutes is going to be 60. This is going to be 70 minutes plus one unmarked section. Now this can be 30 or 35 because this can be a verbal or quant, right? So to be on the safe side, let's take this as 35 minutes. This brings us to 2 hours and 45 minutes. And if we add this 1 hour of analytical writing or 2 essays, let's add 1 hour. So this will bring us to 3 hours, 45 minutes. So roughly, I would say 4 hours. Now, the difficulty that I faced is that I've not, I don't have the habit of sitting for 4 hours at one place while using 100% of my brain, because you have a limit. And then after that, you get really tired and you don't, you start finding it hard to understand the questions. And another thing which probably almost no one mentioned online is that the first part that you have to attempt in your GRE is analytical writing, and you have to write 2 long essays for 1 hour, and that is extremely tiring. And that affected my performance in this section, because in my mock tests, what I used to do was I skipped this part completely, and then I went to this part directly. But that was a big mistake, because you have to solve this section while after having the stamina of writing 2 huge essays. So this is something that you should keep in mind, and then with practice and mock tests, you can eventually increase your stamina and hopefully get a good score. So I think we've completed the GRE stuff. Let's talk about resources. I have used the 5LB Manhattan book for both quant and verbal. And Manhattan also has a 7 or 8 book series. I don't remember the exact name. You can search it on Amazon and find it. It's a very good book series. I like that too. And then the ETS book, if you guys don't know, GRE is conducted by an organization called ETS. So they have their official guide for GRE. That's also a very good resource. I've heard that a few quant questions directly come from this book. Again, I cannot verify the authenticity of this, but it's also a very good resource. And then you have your online courses like Magoosh and GregMat. They provide you with videos, they track your progress, they give you weekly tests, etc. So if you don't have the personal discipline, and if you can afford their courses, I would definitely suggest you to go for this, because it's a bit easier to if there's an online course and someone's tracking your progress, it's a bit, it helps with motivation, etc. And again, if nothing works, you have YouTube playlists. YouTube always helps you, even in engineering exams, etc. And another question that I've been asked a lot is, what is a good score for GRE? For example, I scored a 310 score. Now, I consider this as an average score, but then what is a good score? Now, this is a very subjective question. For example, if a student has scored 330 out of 340, which is generally considered a very good score, but that person is applying to Stanford, where most of the other applicants will be scoring around, a perfect score of 340 or 339, etc. A 330 score is below average considered for Stanford. But then if you consider university somewhere in between, like University of Texas, Arlington, or University of Florida, something like that, a 330 score is a very good score for that. So, it really depends on your relative score in your pool of applicants for that university. Right. So that's something that you will have to see the past trends, and then, basically try to get the highest score possible, and then, keep that in mind, and don't restrict yourself. I've seen this a lot, that, people see this, that this particular university has a average GRE score of, let's say, 310. 310. So if you've scored 306, you feel that, okay, I shouldn't apply, they wouldn't let me in, or they wouldn't get me an admit. That is completely false. Because your GRE score is not the only thing that they see. That is the thing about US universities, that the process is completely holistic. In Asian countries, what happens is there is a standardized national test. In India, there's JE, Joint Entrance Examination. So, you have a bunch of subjects, you have a one exam, you're ranked, and as soon as you get a rank, for example, it's AIR 435 something, you can predict which colleges you can go with absolute certainty. But in the US, you cannot just say that, okay, I got a perfect GRE score, they'll let me in for sure. That it doesn't work that way. Your projects, your experience, your GPA, your SOP, LOR, they'll see everything. And that's why, to some extent, I think that the cost of application fees in US universities is justified. Assuming that they are seeing your whole application and not just one single score. So don't really take this very serious while applying, but then while writing the exam, try to get the highest possible score that you can. And then another very interesting thing I want to talk about is the GRE scandal. Now, all of us know about the COVID pandemic. It's affected all of our lives. So due to this, the GRE online exam was introduced. Basically, you can write this exam from your house now. And unfortunately, and very, expectedly, people started using this, taking advantage of this fact, and they started cheating. They had people helping them from, sitting beside them or something like that. And then after a few months, a service was introduced where people were paying 40,000 rupees, 40,000 plus rupees. 40,000 is just like the average price that I've heard of, for someone else to write their exam. So let's say this is your computer. The GRE test is going on this side, and then a person from somewhere around the world will be showing you answers on this side of the computer. So, this is a virtual machine. So even though GRE, forces you to install a bunch of softwares and all just to make sure that no one is helping you. But then since this is a virtual machine, they don't know that there is another person who is showing you answers from here. So long story short, people were paying 40,000 plus rupees for these people. They were showing answers, and students were getting 325 plus scores, which is a very, very, very good score. And it takes around 2 months or 3 months of preparation to get this score. And students were just paying 40,000, 50,000 rupees and getting this score. So this was a huge scandal this year, and many universities made GRE optional. Many universities just did not even consider a GRE online score. So I would suggest you to write the GRE by going to the center if possible. So I would suggest you guys to please avoid these methods. And I just thought that you should be aware of the fact that this is happening around you. Now let's come to the next part, which is IELTS. This is the format. You guys can take a screenshot. You have listening. You have your listening part. You have your reading, writing, speaking, and you can see 40 questions, 30 minutes, etc. It's not that hard. If you just give a few, one or two mock tests, you will understand the format. It's not that hard to understand. And then coming to the resources, when you book your IELTS test, you're given a mock test book. This book is sent to your address, and it contains 4 mock tests. So that is all that I gave. And then just a few days, like 2 or 3 days before, I spent like a few hours on YouTube researching about and learning how how can I improve my speaking skills, and how can I improve my writing skills specifically for the IELTS exam and how the exam is conducted, etc. I'd say there are a lot of amazing resources online. Many people also ask me, should I join a coaching center, etc. I would say that coaching centers are not really useful at this point, because proficiency in a language is not built in a few days. That's something you have to practice. So if you have a few months of time, or more than that, I would say just in general start preparing and improve your proficiency in the language. It will help you not just for IELTS, but even in your future. Now, another famous question is, does the IELTS score matter? Now, let me explain. Many universities have a cutoff of 7 out of 9 for IELTS, and they absolutely do not care if you have a score which is above 7. But if you get a score which is below 7, let's say 6.5, they will automatically reject your application. So this is very this is a serious score. It's not like if you get 6.5, you can still request the university to let you in. It doesn't work that way. You have to get 7 or 7 above, if at all it's mentioned in the university that 7 is the minimum score needed. So I would suggest give a few mock tests and see if you're getting a score above 7 or below 7. If you're getting a score below 7, then you should take this very seriously. But if you're easily scoring, let's say 7.5 or something, it doesn't it's not a good investment to get a score like 9 out of 9 or 8.5 or something like that. But just make sure that you get more than the minimum required score. The higher the score, it's not like the more higher the score is, the more your application is going to be given priority or something like that. It doesn't work as the GRE score. And my IELTS score was 8.5 out of 9. Another thing I forgot to mention is that I would suggest you to first book your IELTS test, because in these months, September, October, November, these months, you have to book a slot at least 30 to 40 days before, or you won't get a slot. So I would suggest that first book a slot 30 to 40 days before. So you'll have a target to work towards. So for example, you will wake up and you'll think that, okay, I have 30 days for my IELTS test. Let's sit down and let's start preparing. So you'll have that motivation too. So with that out of the way, I think we have finished step 2, which is all about exams, etc. If you have any questions, any feedback whatsoever, you can always contact me on my Instagram, which is at buildwithmalik. You will find the description. You'll find the link in the description. And the next video in this series is going to be about MS applications. It's very, very important. So I hope to see you in that video for part 3.